Here is the absolute must-have list of things you should have in your property before you welcome your first guest. The first one is an identified process to pass the keys to the guest. Make sure you have clearly defined what the guest needs to do when they arrive, where they need to go, where to pick up the key, and how to open the door. And if there is any code involved, make sure it is passed to the guest correctly. Get this process very clearly defined and make sure you effectively communicate it to the guest. Check-in is so important. People will not forgive you if they had to wait for 10-15 minutes in the check-in process. This is the most critical step of the hosting process. So make sure your check-in process is clearly defined, it is easy to understand, it is foolproof, and people will not struggle to check in. The second is a comfortable and clean space for a guest to sleep. Cleaning is the most important aspect of this business. People will ignore anything else but not cleaning. They will not forgive you if the property isn't clean. Cleaning is the one part which can make or break your business. So make sure your cleaning always stays at the standard when you start. Keep all those checks and things in place to make sure there are never any mistakes made by the cleaner. The washing is done properly, the linen is properly laid out, there are no hairs on the bed, all that kind of stuff. But make sure there are no obvious mistakes made by the cleaners. The third one is toilet with loo rolls and hand wash. These two things you will need to keep replenishing in your property. So make sure you have a procedure in place. What I do is my cleaners, the special instructions to them are every time before they exit the property after cleaning, they have to go in the bathrooms and check for loo rolls and if there is a hand wash. These things can be missed very easily. You need to have a process in place to stop them being missed. The next is internet. Internet is so important for people. Everyone, no matter whether they are traveling local or internationally, everyone wants to have access to internet as soon as they land to let their loved ones back in their home. Make sure internet is working when they arrive. If there is any hiccup, if you are having some problems with the internet, make sure you communicate it to the guest before they arrive. At least give them a 24 hours notice before they arrive that there is a problem with the internet so they can make their own arrangement. But having someone come over to the property without an internet is going to lead you to a disaster. And the next one is clearly mention on your listing what is there in the property and what is not. Getting lots of 5-star reviews from the guest is easy on Airbnb, and the only trick to get lots and lots of 5-star reviews from people is to make sure your listing correctly reflects your property. There should be no surprises for people. You do not want them to assume anything. Tell them clearly what they will find when they arrive at the property. If you have a list of amenities, make sure you mention it clearly on Airbnb. And if there is something very peculiar about your property, like it is next to a noisy restaurant or a pub or on a very noisy street, make sure your listing correctly reflects your property. And the next one is keep a big folder with all the user manuals of all the appliances in your property. People will come from various parts of the world. They won't know all those things which you use on a regular basis and you think they are very common. They may not have seen all those things and they will struggle with each and every equipment if they are coming from the other part of the world. Make sure you have all the instruction manuals in a big folder so people can easily access it. It increases their satisfaction level. It makes their experience a more pleasurable one without having to call you every 5 or 10 minutes when they start cooking their dinner or when they start watching a telly. They don't know what to do with the remote and all that kind of stuff. So make sure keep all the user manuals in a big folder. And the next one is easily overlooked. When we are setting up a new property, you've got a new property, you furnished it, but you never slept in it for a night. And I've done this mistake so many times personally. You make sure the windows are properly dark, especially in the bedrooms. people need dark room when they're sleeping for obvious reasons. So make sure your windows and blinds, whatever you have in your property, does properly cover the window and there are no spaces letting light in when people are trying to sleep. And the next one is, if you are in a cold country, heating is essential. Make sure your property has proper heating. If there is any problem with the heating system or the boiler, inform the guest in advance so they can make their own arrangements. You never know what kind of medical condition or health condition people would be. You do not want to surprise them with no heating there at the property. So make sure if you have any problems, let them know in advance, but try and have a proper heating system in place which people can effectively control. And people would want to control the temperature. Some people will find the same temperature too hot, too cold, and all those things. So make sure the control, the thermostat of the heating is there so people can adjust it as per their liking. And the same for hot countries. You need to have AC in place. You need to have the thermostat easily accessible for the guests so they can control the temperature to their liking. And the last one is emergency service numbers. Make sure you display emergency service number in your property in a prominent location so people can access it in case of an emergency, and try and pass the same emergency numbers to the guest in your messages as well before they arrive so they can keep it handy. You never know when this small detail which you pass on to the guest would be so helpful and potentially can save someone's life one day.